What elements of a game lend themselves to handling scheduling and attendance issues? Today on Out of Character. Hi, and welcome to Out of Character. I'm Jason Corley.
I'm Don Down.
And I'm Aaron Lee Newbern.
Assisting us today on engineering is Scott Forster.
Hello.
So this is a question that I've been asked many times in many different ways by many people on many forums. On the Story Games thread where they've been giving us topic ideas, it's come up in many different forms, but I've kind of boiled it down a little bit. Basically, the idea is we're all grown-up people. We all have our own schedules. We all have our own, obligations, and there are people in your game.
Not in college anymore.
Not in college anymore. That's really what this show should be called. Not in college anymore. And as a result, we have a hard time getting everyone together and scheduling everyone together to be at a game every week. Sometimes people have a hard time doing it every month. I'm just coming off a hiatus where I decided I needed a break. I took my little month-long break and I said, yes, I'm ready to go again. When's the next time everyone can be here? And it's another month. So it hits everyone in different ways. But there are some things in games themselves that can be used to ameliorate this situation, to help out game groups get together and actually play. And so I thought I'd ask you guys about that. Aaron, you had some thoughts on campaign structure.
Well, there are actually two models I wanted to talk about today that I believe address this very issue. One of them was developed by a gentleman named Ben Robbins. He's a game designer, longstanding GM, runs cons. He runs a blog called Ars Ludi.
Okay.
And he discussed a campaign he did one time, which he referred to as the West Marches. At the time, he had this huge group of people, none of whom had schedules that would overlap. So he designed this campaign.
When you say a huge group of people, you're talking 15 to 20 people, right?
15 to 20 was about the size, was about the group he had, but none of them had schedules that would ever overlap. So what he did was he created a campaign world where there was, a random group of explorers who would go out into the wilderness, and they would, every week, whoever could come would meet up at the tavern, would go out, explore some section of the world. They would just choose right then and there, or they'd choose a little bit ahead of time so he had some prep time. They'd email him. Say, okay, we can meet on this day, the 5 of us, we want to go here. And then they'd go out, they'd come back, and they would scrawl the map they had explored on this piece of paper, which represented a table in the inn that they were carving. And so everyone who came got to see some element of the world that the people got to do when they weren't there.
So basically, they were creating this sort of shared map that everybody would use, and it would represent their shared knowledge, even though I may never have been in a game with, say, you. Things that you did would affect what I did.
Exactly. Or, if we're only ever in a game once, or we can't, or, we're in a game a bunch of times, but the other 3 people there change out every time.
Right.
We have some commonality to it. Granted, while this creates a low load on the players because they don't have to commit to a damn thing, it creates a huge load on the GM because
you've got to track this huge world now.
And he has to have the diegesis of an entire world in his head.
Mm-hmm.
So the other model I like for this, if the GM has trouble with their schedule, is using John Wick's model, which he uses in a lot of his games, my favorite being Blood and Honor, one of the spinoffs of the Houses of the Blooded series.
The best in the Houses of the Blooded series.
Definitely.
Okay.
And
just so we're all on the same page.
How this one works is literally the night you show up, the game is designed so you create your character. Everyone creates their characters, 10 minutes. You have 6 numbers, couple lines of text. You create the world in under half an hour by establishing a few base parameters, and everyone goes around and says one thing that's true about your little fiefdom. Once you have that set up, you just roll right along. It's improv from there. And the great thing about this being for everyone is that the design of the game is such that your character is unimportant. Your character is probably going to die before the end of the session. The character everyone cares about is the fiefdom in the world. It is a gestalt character. So anyone can just, commit seppuku and leave the game at any point if they need to, and come in with a fresh character because the important character, the world, survives. And that character, even that character, was created in half an hour with no prep time.
So basically what you have in the John Wick model is you've got a very small time footprint for basically a meaningful section of play. Including designing a scenario for a GM who might not have a wide open schedule.
Exactly.
And I think that if we are talking about, elements of a game or a campaign world, I think that there are certain campaign types that lend themselves to this, like the Explorers campaign in the West Marches. I think that if, say, you have a group in a military unit or a group in a police station or situations where they are required to do what they're told and not necessarily everybody is told to do the same thing all the time, you know, a person who's not there, they could just basically say, you're back at the station doing paperwork from the last 3 cases that you didn't do your paperwork on.
It's kind of funny because we all dove into this with one, when you talk about campaign types, we all dove into this with one assumption, and that was that you wanted some consistency in your campaign.
Right.
Right. It's like, I remember there's, if you're comfortable with it, well, it really doesn't matter who shows up. It's like, oh, you're at a campsite somewhere and orcs attack.
Now you're here. Yeah.
Now, if you want, now if you have that
I actually did run a game like that at one point where I said, guys, I don't care about consistency in this game.
Right.
If you show up to play and you want to play,
we're going to do something.
It's like you put a quarter in a slot of a video game and hit 2-player start. Your guy appears there, and if you've got a better story for how he got there, that's great. Tell your story. But I'm not going to come up with it, and no one else is going to come up with it.
That's how we used to play when I was 12, you know? Whoever showed up, bring your character.
Yeah, because you're just there to roll dice and,
enjoy. Right? Well, you're there to enjoy the puzzles. You're there to enjoy the experience. You're there to interact with others. There's many things you get out of that without it being a consistent world.
Getting back to consistency.
Back to consistency.
Both of you have brought up very good points where it's like, okay, there's a central point that's fairly stationary.
Right.
Now, something else that's fun to do, if you still want to go out and travel travel the world, is you can make that stationary point not so stationary, but keep a group of people together, such as a circus, a traveling circus. You're part of a troupe, and that way,
I like that
your
idea.
campaign, you have a whole group of people. When you talked about the explorers, I was expecting an expedition of 50 people. It's Lost, right? Different characters might, the TV show. You know, there's so many people on this island. Somebody new might show up, but they're presumed to have always been part of the island. Of course, that's still very stationary. But let's see, what else? A ship, right? You're part of a crew on a ship. You sail to a new part of the world. Very easy to explain why there's somebody there one day and not there the next.
Got dysentery. Whatever it happens.
I hate it when that happens.
I hate when that happens. So in that situation, what you have is, as you say, it's a mobile base of operations. Maybe it needs maintenance. Maybe it needs fueling. Maybe someone has to, and we all have always denigrated this, but saying he stays behind to protect the ship.
Right.
Yeah, why not? Just have it happen when it's off screen, and it doesn't matter if that person's doing a boring thing.
After a while,
an episode.
A ship crew that I DM'd for a long time, they ended up, I think it was a magic item I gave them, but it was a door, where if they left a door somewhere, they could just take this magical, basically teleportation type of thing.
Teleportation is a great way to bring them.
Point, what I mean? So you can go anywhere in the world, of course.
Town portal, basically.
From
Diablo.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, it's a town portal from Diablo. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So, having a technology or magic like teleportation can also help with that kind of a thing. I think that another element that can help is having players that have some input into what their character is doing. In other words, if the group has a really strong direction and someone can't show up, they're going to be left behind by that direction. Whereas if players sort of contribute to the direction, and I guess this is getting back to the John Wick idea, if players contribute to the direction, then first of all, they always have an excuse why they weren't there. I was off looking for clues into the disappearance of my brother or whatever it happens to be. And secondly, it also means that when they do show up, it's always with some agenda in mind. It's something that's going to happen because I'm here. And that makes who shows up to be kind of meaningful. And as you have different groups of people, of things coming and going, the game is going to shift direction based on what their interests are. So games that have mechanics like that, like flags or milestones or goals or anything like that, those are going to help in making it be more meaningful when people are able to come. And I guess I should say, the truism I always use is people are going to give the game the priority they give it. Nothing that you do, you shouldn't guilt someone if they can't show up for a game. It's a leisure time activity, right? Like if they are having a particular level of fun and they would have more fun going out to the movies with a friend, they should go to the movies with a friend and not come to the game. I mean, that's just how matters of taste work. So.
As long as they give you enough notice, there is
Or if you've planned your game so that it can accommodate them not coming.
If you've planned your game around their character and they tell you half an hour beforehand, oh, we're going to the movies instead.
Yeah.
Then we're not going to plan any more sessions around you.
That's back to social contracts.
Yes.
Exactly. Like, what's the expectation? Knowing, well, when I told my friends, yeah, it's like you put a quarter in and hit 2-player start. That's an expectation I told them right up front. They knew that starting the game. And so by doing that, we established that expectation.
I'm reminded of scenes in Gamers.
Oh,
the movie.
Yes, of course.
They address that quite well.
they certainly did. All right. Well, don't forget, we've talked a lot about John Wick's approach to this situation, and he's going to be a guest on our live show. That's going to be on August 21st, 7 p.m. Pacific at livestream.com/pulpgamer. We're going to be talking to him about a lot of different topics that his games have raised. Probably going to get into some arguments with him like I normally do. And you can be a part of it on Twitter and Facebook. And in addition, feel free to let us know if you've ever had a situation where you've had a creative way to solve a scheduling issue or an attendance issue. Let us know. We're happy to talk about your feedback, which is at Twitter, Facebook. You can leave a message in the comments on YouTube or at pulpgamer.com. Thanks very much for watching.
Thank you.
pulpgamer.com